Okay, Brad, thanks a lot, man, for joining me in this conversation today. So, for the person watching this video, if you could just share your name, where you live at, and then a little bit about your businesses and your operation.
Okay, Brad Hanowich. I'm from Rensselaer, Indiana, born and raised. What we do here, I own and operate Hanowich Cattle Company. It's a multi-level purebred and show cattle operation. I'd like to say we sold more commercial seed stock than we do. Unfortunately, that's not my geography. We do a little, but we're primarily focused on genetics and show cattle of multiple breeds as well as show steers. Do sell some other stuff like commercial bulls when we can, but that market's almost non-existent here. There's just not that many of us left. As well as that, my wife owns a photography company that travels nationally and covers a lot of those bigger shows and events, does a lot of sale cattle pictures and website design and promotion. I judge a lot, auctioneer a little, pretty much involved in every aspect of the cattle industry, but I guess our focus is primarily on the seed stock and show cattle.
Okay, awesome. Well, so let's see. You've been in for quite a few months now, but first question I'll ask you, Brad, is really what was not working in life and business before joining Legacy Farmer? What were the reasons for coming in?
Can I say everything wasn't working? It didn't matter. Like, it's the same thing all over. You talk to different people and everybody's story is the same. I was putting in 20-hour days, coming home with a newborn son, feeling guilty for busting my ass all day and doing everything I thought I was doing to improve my family situation. Love my wife dearly, and I know she feels the same, but we were at a point where we were just ready to kill each other. Like, zero time for us, hardly any time. And then the guilt of not being at home, and then like calving, like most livestock people or guys that feed cattle, you lose one. It's not about the dollars. You take it personal. I mean, that was a life that you were responsible for. So, spreading yourself so thin, like during a calving season, and you got your own kid there, and it don't matter. I was chasing my tail and running around in circles, and outside looking in, we were selling them high. We were winning shows. It looked like we had it going on. And inside I was screaming. Like, I had no organization to my thoughts. I had no organization to my actions. I felt like I was losing on all fronts. I felt like I was losing who I was as a person.
How many farmers and ranchers do you think feel that way?
You know what? Like, and I know this is probably for a later question, but it's amazing. A good friend of mine and I had this talk like 2 years ago. We were at the North American in Louisville, and he was going through a divorce at the time from basically everything I just described. And he was talking about just looking around and looking at all the people that appeared like they were maybe struggling, not happy, didn't want to be there. And everybody was just kind of putting their time in. And kind of from that point forward, I guess that was my first inclination to raise a level of awareness. And then having gone through this program, I'm going to tell you something, man. Like, in the last month, I've made a lot of farm visits, trying to buy some trading cattle and fill in some gaps here. Like, you can pull into a guy's place and just read it all over his face. Like, something's wrong. And so to answer that, I would say I love this demographic. It's our fraternity, right? Like, that's our culture. But I would say more guys than not, probably.
Yeah, I would say 9 out of 10.
Yeah.
Like, you just got screaming inside, and like, I don't know what to do. It seems like everything is burning down around me. It doesn't matter if I work 28 hours a day, right? And even if I got an extra 4 hours, it would not make a difference.
Yep. And I was at that point. It was like, well, okay, I need to balance it. So, I'll just start 2 to 3 hours earlier. And then it got to the point where, well, maybe if I just don't sleep.
Yeah.
And then you become so stagnant and burned out, and you half-ass everything.
Yeah. And most of these guys aren't sleeping anyway because they're up because of the financial stress.
Oh yeah. Then there's that. Like, I will say one thing. The only positive for me with that, though, is doing a solo suicide mission, calving 230 club calf embryos, El Solo in the winter, only being able to sleep 5 to 10 minutes at a time. Actually, if there was any silver lining in any of that for me, it was I never missed a calf check.
That's for sure.
It still sucks though.
We'll move into the next question. What was the biggest thing you noticed change for Brad once you joined, personally and business wise?
For the first, like you've talked about this through all these trainings and through some of the calls that we all get on, like nobody's ever been taught. Mm-hmm. And I realized this, I love my father to death, but I realized this probably 20 years ago. We were out cutting brush on a ditch bank, and he was kind of telling me, you know, this and that. He was still crop farming at the time, and you need to do this and that. And I just looked at him, set the chainsaw down, and said, Dad, that ain't the world we live in. It don't work like that anymore. So, like, my level of awareness started back then.
Yep.
But there's so many of us, it's just, we don't know any better. You just get up and you work harder than the next guy, and you put more hours in, and in the meantime, you're getting your ass kicked on all fronts because you just plain don't know what you're fighting. And I'm guilty of that. I mean, my solution, Jace, for a lot of years was just sell more of them higher, win more. Well, the backside of that was, had I had these tools and I had the structure that this program provides, I've made a hell of a lot of money in my life, more than most that do this. And I pissed most of it away because I didn't know what to do with it. And so I would tell you, actually, this is embarrassing, and I'm proud to say this in the same breath. For the first time in my life, I have a safe with cash in it. And we had a really good run at the first of the year, sold some seed stock extremely high. It was a 6-figure check. I took 20% of that check and I put it in my safe the day I cashed it. And for Valentine's Day, I got my wife a dozen roses, and on her card it said, vacation somewhere tropical for the first time ever. I'm really sorry.
Yeah.
I'm sorry it took this long.
Yeah.
And, you know, so like for me, finally having some sort of outline to follow, you know, and we're all guilty of it. I mean, we're fighting weather, interest rates, so many moving parts beyond our control that you become a victim of your environment and you just embrace that as yourself. Like, well, that's just how it's supposed to be. Well, it's not how it's supposed to be. You know, that's the reason I do what I do for a living, is I felt like I could kind of somewhat control or dictate my direction. And all of a sudden I became a victim of my own bullshit.
Yeah. Well, and what you said too about just going on a vacation, like how many guys continue to tell their wives, hey, like it'll be better next year. It'll like give us some time, give us a couple more years here. I'm going to get some stuff figured out. And then like, they're all planning on doing that one day, but it just never freaking happens.
And no, I was the world's worst at it. Yeah. Like, I can't tell you how many times we spent an anniversary or birthday, something significant. You know, I was judging a show or auctioneering something, or had to be at this sale for this or that. And that ain't fair to her. She didn't sign up for that. I mean, she loves the same things I love, but everybody's got their breaking point.
Yep.
You know, what's wrong with, you know, like today, we hustled back, I unloaded some cattle before we done this, but you know what? There happened to be this beach halfway between where I was going to pick cattle up and where the show barn's at. So we left 3 hours earlier, and I watched my little kid play in the water, and it was awesome, man. It's one of the best days I've ever had. And guess what? Because of this program, I started planning all this yesterday. It's going to work out great. Yeah. I'll be home for dinner tonight. And it's just, if anybody like would really dive into this and just admit, I think that was the biggest thing for me too, just admitting, you know, I got a problem. And I'm my own biggest problem because I don't know what I'm doing. Like, I need some structure.
I'm the biggest problem because I won't admit that I have a problem.
Pretty much.
Yeah. Oh, I was the same way too. We were all raised the same way. We held everything close to the heart, and it's like, man, we don't want to admit failure or not knowing something. So
How many of us heard, so are you hurt or are you injured? Are you sick or are you dying? Like, it's not cool to be vulnerable, you know? So we treat the facade, man.
I know.
All I can say is thanks, because like I finally had to face it.
Good, man. So out of everything we do inside of Legacy Farmer, man, we got the trainings and the coaching calls, the tools, the resources, the structure, the business stuff. Like, what would you say is your absolute favorite thing?
The reality,
Okay.
the fact that it's just real, and
Right.
there's people talking about it. Like in college, I was the social chair of Purdue AGR Delta chapter, right? This feels like a fraternity, and AGR was social/professional fraternity, right? We did things,
Yep.
and we were structured and on and on. This is different, though, in the aspect that, you know, in college, we don't talk about all the ugly. We just paint this imaginary rainbow and move forward. This, like, it starts where it's at, and it starts with you. And until you can face yourself, you damn sure can't face nothing else.
And that's what a lot of guys say is like they're talking about the coaching calls and how much the coaching calls is just opened up for them to, like, they're finally, I have a place where I can talk about the real shit and I don't have to feel bad about it. I don't have anybody that's going to judge me on it, and I can get real clarity on what I need to do to solve the situation and keep moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, the realism of it, and it's different. I guess I use that analogy of like my fraternity days versus this. It is a fraternity, but it's a hand-selected fraternity, just like any other one would be. Yep. The difference, though, is nobody judges you here. Like, we're all here. We're all trying to make our situation, our farm, our family deal better, whatever. And I guess for me, that's what I've enjoyed the most. There's lots of layers of it. Mm-hmm. And the one thing I have learned through this is just get to the point, so I could elaborate a lot of other ways. All I'm going to say is this. For me, that's the biggest value, and I could expand into several subcategories, but I don't imagine we got 5 hours.
Okay, well, we'll move into the last question. And so, let's imagine somebody sitting on the fence here, and they've listened to all the videos, they're watching this testimonial right now, and they're trying to figure out, okay, is this legit? Is this for me? And they're sitting on the fence about joining Legacy Farmer, and they ask Brad, hey, Brad, should I get involved with this? What would Brad say to them?
I'd just ask them a question. Why wouldn't you? Yeah. It's not working at home, or you wouldn't even be looking at it. So why not take the jump? And like, I'm a sports nut, and I know you are too. We both play basketball. One of the greatest things Michael Jordan ever said in an interview, which y'all can say what you want, he's still the best there ever was. The guy invented the game and took it to a whole new level. And a guy of that stature was willing to sit there in an open mic interview and admit his own shortcomings or accentuate his own strengths. All he said is, why would I be afraid of a shot I never took? Yeah. So don't be afraid. Just do it. It's worth it. I mean, for a guy to come from an industry, okay, and I'll admit this, never let them see you sweat, right? Never let them see you weak. Never let them see you vulnerable. I will flat guarantee you, in the show cattle world, there's so much smoke and mirrors to every level of it. One of the hardest things for me to do, because people know who we are across the country, was to actually put that aside and not care if somebody found out I was doing something for me. Hell, I'm proud of it. Yep. I wear my legacy hat to shows now, and people are like, what's that? I'm like, best thing I ever done. Yeah. So take the leap. I mean, there's nothing but good going to come out of this. And maybe you use some of the stuff from the trainings. Maybe you don't. Maybe all you do is just find yourself again. For me, the greatest thing that I got was, and I'm not there yet, I'm not where I want to be, yep, but I can tell you I'm 100 miles ahead of where I was, is trying to figure that balance out. Yeah. Because I can assure you, man, we're fixing to sell 80 head of cattle here in about 12 days. The last friggin' thing I ever would have done my whole life was spend a day at the beach.
Yeah, 100%.
But it's probably the best thing, and I had some great memories today with my son, and hey, my wife's happy, and I'm probably going to get dinner made tonight, which sounds pretty good. So,
Yeah. All right.
perfect.
Well, that sounds good, man. Well, we'll cut it off there, man. I appreciate you taking the time to do this with me today.
Hey, no problem.